very much into the general concept of the Tartu 2022. I would like to read it to make it clear what it's all about. Should we talk about survival only in times of surviving? And we worded it exactly this way because that's part of our internal Ukrainian discussion. Obviously, not so known outside of Ukraine, but quite heated inside of the country. And I will ask Oksana Dovopolova, our panelist from Ukraine, to provide us this Ukrainian context, to give us kind of sneak peek into this internal Ukrainian discussions. And Oksana is a professor in Kyiv, at Kyiv School of Economics, quite vibrant private university in Kyiv, and she's also a co-founder and curator of the cultural memory platform Past Future Art, and her field of expertise is memory studies. And full disclosure, Oksana is also a columnist for Ukraina Moderna, one of our opinion columnists, and I'm very happy and very honored to be the editor. So we also have here our host, I may say, from Tartu, Berk Vaher. He's very well known here as the writer, as DJ, and also one of the persons, actually editor of the whole concept, the art of survival, Tartu 2024. And Berk is also a board member of the International Poetry Festival Prima Vista, well known beyond Estonia, and also head of Tartu branch of the Estonian Writer Union. So definitely knows a thing about writers. Teil von Dam is also kind of host, as Teil spent a year in another European Capital of Culture 2024 in Bad Ischl as a project manager and as responsible for evaluation and internationalization of the project in Bad Ischl. So, Oksana, coming back to you and Ukrainian context. So the question is it okay to talk about survival only in times of surviving?
Thank you very much. My greetings to all participants and co-panelists. I'm very proud to be in this company. If to speak about, can we speak about something except survival in a time of survival? We as Ukrainians can witness that we don't speak only about survival. And maybe I will repeat many messages of Yulia Vaganova, who shared her experience as a person from museum and a person who met all these challenges at the beginning of the war and now, not only at the beginning. We can say, we can witness really that at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, it seemed that we will speak only about survival, because our reality is a reality of war, of survival. We don't know what to wait next minute, not next year, but next minute, next day. And it seemed, and from outside, it seemed that we will speak only about the questions of survival. But the reality shows that you can't survive with this, without something more than survival. Because if we have nothing except survival, the process of survival appears of no sense. Yes, and from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, we saw incredible examples of creative activities which seemed impossible in this time. So in spring 2022 in Kharkiv, Kharkiv is near Russia. It's they said that if from Russia they will throw the stick, it will hit Kharkiv. It's so near, and Kharkiv was under constant shelling, and now it is under constant shelling. But people lived in metro, for example, the first months, and in metro worked children art studio, Azanizimaza. It's a brilliant art studio, absolutely incredible. And at the beginning of full-scale invasion, the leader of Azanizimaza, Коля Коломієць, щось я забула. Коля Коломієць, he organized the work of this studio on metro station. And he said to children, dear children, he recorded such short videos, dear children, we live in very hard time and adults need your support. Adults need your help. We need to join, to organize our common work and to make the life of all people better. And children lived in a metro station and prepared such a decoration for this metro station. And so can you imagine this situation? A city under constant shelling. Children are sitting in metro and preparing these pictures to give some joy for others who are scared, who are depressed, who don't know what to do. And for me, it's something amazing, and it's an example of how can we speak about something except survival. So our foreign colleagues called us in the first days of full-scale invasion, and they were sure that the alone question we put before us, how to flee. And it's absolutely ununderstandable how to live in Kharkiv, in metro, and to draw, to organize the work of all these art studio. And really, at the first months of the full-scale invasion, we saw how important museums are, really. Because it's I will prolong Yulia's speech. So imagine museums are without collections. What is museum? Museum is collection, which is presented to the public. And now museums are without collections. And really, it's so dreadful feeling when I came to Odessa National Fine Art Museum when all the works were put out, and I saw these empty walls and it was dreadful. It was so distressing because it's a place of life, really. I'm from Odessa. I live in Odessa. I work in Kyiv School of Economics, but I live in Odessa, and for me, that's why I speak about this museum. And really, today is the birthday of this museum, 125 years, and so I want to greet them too. The museums understood how important they are. They are without collections, but they are magnets for people. And when museums restarted their work, the crowds of people came to museums. I remember the reopening of Odessa Opera House. And they could invite only the number of people who can go to the shelter. So only parterre and one balcony was filled, but people ran into Opera House because it was about survival. It was about survival. It was about life, about resistance. You are waiting that we will sit in shelter, thrilling and waiting for something I don't know. No, we are going to theater. We are going to museums. And museums without constant collections, with their temporary exhibitions of contemporary Ukrainian artists, only Ukrainian. You understand that nobody will bring art into the country in the war. And we saw an outburst of Ukrainian art. Really, it was something incredible because it was a wave of new works of Ukrainian artists, and museums started to show this art. It's a point of joke for museum community in Ukraine. So we save our collections, but we show the contemporary artists. So it's not pity of the contemporary art. We will not hide it. We will show it. But it's important point about our living in a situation of survival. So for artists, it was very important to share their art, to share their works, and to create a field of discussion. And that's why such temporary exhibitions of contemporary art appeared in different museums, and Hanyanka Museum was one of the first who opened the space for such life. And I can say, especially visit the openings in Odessa Fine Art Museum, and they are overcrowded each time, because for people it's important to gather, to meet one another, to come into such space where the new senses are born, where we can share our experience, where we can meet this new art and discuss it. And for the first year, maybe, of full-scale invasion, it was such a phenomenon when the wide audience became to understand the contemporary art. So you understand, the contemporary art is something strange, nobody wants to go, we want something beautiful. And the language of Ukrainian artists changed, and it appeared understandable for all. I don't know, it's not a simplification of contemporary art. Maybe it's a new experience of white audience who started to recognize their emotions, their feelings, then they meet the piece of art. And when we organized with my colleagues, with the Past Future Art team, we organized an exhibition of contemporary Ukrainian artists in Kunstmuseum Stuttgart. We organized special excursions for Ukrainian community there, and there were people very far from art, very far from museum, but they recognized their feelings, they recognized their emotions. And it's about finding the answer for the question who we are. So during these years of full-scale invasion, we can fix that circulation of classic Ukrainian literature was increased a few times. It's really
a very interesting phenomenon. Yeah, exactly.
So when we think that publishing of books appeared, how can we publish books in situation of the war? But people want to buy Ukrainian literature and classic Ukrainian literature, the literature of beginning of 20th century. It's a wave of interest. It's so great interest, and when I come to the discussions devoted to Ukrainian literature in Odessa. Odessa is such a...
Not immersed in the context before.
Yes. And I see very young people who speak very professionally about Ukrainian literature, and it's something incredible. When our foreign colleagues called us, they asked a very funny for us questions, really, but we understand that they are absolutely natural. So one of our colleagues on the call, she asked, "How are you going to the shop?" And really we laughed because you see by feet, so we have no other way to go to the shop. But we understand that a person who is sitting in Germany can't imagine how we live in Kiev or in Odessa. And when we, Past Future Art, I mentioned this exhibition in Stuttgart, and we organized this year Ukrainian Pavilion on Malta Biennale Contemporary Art, and we saw such a very important moment. People appear involved in these messages of Ukrainian artists, and one example, in this Stuttgart exhibition, we had such a sound work, and what it was record of the sounds of Ukrainian cities. Odessa, Kiev, Lviv, Dnipro, and Uzhhorod.
These days.
Yeah, records of 2022. Really, it was a streaming, but after this we took the records and presented them in the exhibition. People constantly stood near this work, listening these sounds. And they said us, when we listen it, we listen the sounds of very alive cities. And this is the reason to donate for Ukraine. And for us, it was, we didn't wait such a reaction. But and it was no sounds of blows. Only on one record it was air raid siren. So no sounds of war. It's sounds of life, and so such a moment of our life inside the war. It was a record of the sounds in the first hour of curfew. So for us, it's very important, and it's the survival is not possible without something more than survival. So we see it in our experience. We can touch this experience, and we understand that we have no chance to survive if we don't make some steps in culture, because it's not only about saving our bodies, but saving our souls. Some works of Ukrainian artists were reloaded their sense. So maybe on my sock is a picture of Ukrainian artist Alexander Royburt. The picture David and Goliath. And Odessa National Fine Art Museum prepared merch with this picture with an inscription, Goliath will be defeated. And all people involved in this community have these some T-shirts or socks or something with this message, because it's our
slogan.
No. It's a kind of magic. So we try to push these messages into universe to kill this Goliath. Really, maybe the last moment which I want to mark this reality. So we understand that culture is very important, and we understand that our culture is about the war. Even a person draw something, a plant, a flower, or something, or a bird. It's about the war, because the contexts are working. But it has such other side, such self-censorship, because we ask ourselves, can we speak about something except the war? So culture is about the war, but can we say something except the war? And so the answers of Ukrainian artists, for example, are they are reflecting this situation. For example, Katya Buchatska, Ukrainian artist, she prepared, and this project is not demonstrated. It will be demonstrated after the war will be ended, and it's a project. What I'm ashaming to put in Facebook. Oh. So when I make some photo, I have a drink of wine or something, and I want to share it as usual in Instagram, in Facebook, and I stop myself. Maybe it's not a time for such pictures. So we now have at least one artist prepared such a project which will be postponed after the end of the war. Maybe now I will finish and...
Thank you, Oksana. Tila, actually, that's the point I would like to get over to you, and I would ask about your optics from the outside world, and your optics of someone who, at some point, makes an assessment of the project. You know, you have all this. Kind of proposal, and you have the idea what is interesting for people. I have a feeling, maybe it's just a stereotype, that lately we Ukrainians are expected to communicate in our works, be it articles or poetry or art or whatever, this unique experience of living in a war. There's something which is extreme. And I don't think that Ukraine is the only, troubled place in the world. There are many other not so happy countries, not a lot of problematic places where people suffer. Do you see that these kind of works from these troubled places have higher chances to get attention? Is it something that we expected to communicate to the outside world?
Okay, I will try to answer it. It's a quite sophisticated and huge question. Just 2 minutes. I just want to say thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure being here, and it's a pleasure to be invited on that super important symposia. And only one small correction, but I think I need to make it. I'm not part of the European Capital of Culture in Austria anymore, but I worked there for a very long time, and I'm familiar with the project. Also, at the moment, I was still working with the European Capital of Culture. Just for your information, so you can ask me about the ECOC if you want later, but I'm not officially speaking for the ECOC anymore. So now to the super wide question. Obviously, let's say I tried to put a little bit the look from let's say from the Central European perspective or the European Union perspective. I mean, I'm not the European Union, as hopefully we are all something like the European Union, because it's up to us to make it, to build it for the future. But surely I was born in Germany, so I raised up in the Western culture, how you, let's say, call it. Worked abroad in the United States and in India, so I'm also a little bit familiar with, let's say, a different culture than a European culture or classical European culture. And you know that Germany is probably a very specific country, as we were divided until 1990, so we know from the very, let's say, national history, at least partly also what we let's say in general call the transformation process from former Eastern states into, and this is again up to us, how do we love to have the future and how we react on that. Maybe I start with a super small story, because I had the luck last year, it's really 1 year ago, I was invited. And it was my first time being in Ukraine, to be precise, in Kiev and Lviv. And I was invited for a Ukraine-European exchange program on cultural development. And it was amazing. Of course, it was challenging. I mean, sure, it's challenging. I mean, I don't need to tell you. But it was amazing. And just probably as a small addition, Oksana, we will hopefully have a little bit time to discuss it. I honestly didn't get the feeling that it's only about survival. We met a lot of artists, very much from the performative arts, dancing, theater performances, but also in Lviv, the new initiative on art therapy and taking artistic methodologies into education, into artistic performances. So sure, I mean, let's face the reality, there is a war. I mean, please, you are much more, you know it much better than me. But sure, but I think it is also very much, and this is probably the first attempt to try to answer your question. No, it is also very much of going beyond. And there is a beyond. There will be a beyond. I mean, that's my belief, sorry. Hope, I mean, we all hope it, but yeah. I don't think the selling argument for Ukraine is you need to talk about the war. It's there, no doubt, but at least from my perspective, from what I witnessed, and I think what you mentioned as an example from Stuttgart, is actually a showcase for something different. And honestly, there is a super richness from Ukraine and also from other European countries on reflecting, on going beyond. And of course, it's always, I mean, the art and our culture is always in an interaction with the current situation. So yeah, from my side, it would be, no, you don't need it as a pure selling argument. That doesn't mean you should be silent, absolutely not. I mean, it's impossible to be silent on current situations. And it is absolutely needed to articulate the situation, especially, and maybe to be a little bit precise, I mean, you all follow, well, from time to time, the wonderful discussions in the European Union and its member states. And let's be precise, we have a rising movement of right-wing parties. We have a rising movement of people who are denying the right of Ukraine to be his own state. I mean, we need to face that reality and we need to be precise. Maybe this is one try to answer your question. A second that I would probably raise also for our discussion is we talk about culture. At least if we talk about the European capital of culture, where we are, thankfully, where we can be here. But we, of course, also talk about the arts. And to me, it's important to say that culture is more than art. It is education. It is like what we had in the discussion before, like the role of a museum is not only the exhibition, it is also education, it is going out, it is making international connections, etc. So culture is much more. It's much more than, and come on, I will never say only the arts, because I mean we are coming from artistic work, and I think the arts. But also, let's say, cultural methodologies plays an important role, no doubt, no doubt. They play an important role for the future of our democracy, and we desperately need it, And I think, to me, it's a little bit like, and that is also probably an interlinkage to the discussion in the morning, the first one. The cultural sector is very much under threat in the whole European Union. I mean, budget cuts, you mentioned it for Estonia. Come on, be precise. Guess how it's in Germany. Guess how it's in Austria. Guess how it's in Belgium. Guess how it's in UK, if we still count it as part of Europe. We are under threat. And it looks like we are in a very defensive position. And honestly, there are a lot of discourses who say, we need to be a little bit silent because, of course, other things are more important. Yeah, you're financial guys, you're right. We need to invest it in A, B, C. And again, that's what I would make strong. Guys, culture is more. Culture is more. And this is so important. So it's, I mean, let us be precise. I mean, if we want to lose democracy, and it looks like a little bit, I mean, I don't need to tell you which countries are, let's say, very strongly moving to the right-winged side and to a non-democratic, or let's say not really democratic. I know we invented that. It's a little bit half-democratic, you know. Yeah, fancy term, what does it mean? And it's not easy for the European Union at the moment. And I mean, you all notice it. So that would be my second thing, to say, okay, no, we have really strong arguments, because without our culture, and democracy is part of our culture. I mean, it's hello. We had Greece. You know that Greece is something called, which is not really true. It's Athens, and even that is not a modern democracy. But let's not go into details. It's a fountain of democracy. I mean, that's famous for. We all learn it in school. And this is, by the way, also I like what you said, Oksana, that even in a super hard situation and in a challenging situation, and war is more than challenging, I'm sorry, of course, you are curious, you are able to learn something, you want to see something, you want to learn something. And it's not only about surviving. It is about surviving, and please, I'm living in Austria currently. We are obviously not at war. So please understand it as an outside position to Ukraine. But I think, to me, surviving is also incorporating a little bit passive look at the world. I think it is more than just surviving. And to be precise, I mean, we have the right-wing movement people and the fancy anti-corona people and the people who really believe that climate change is an invention by, I've got no clue, Elon Musk probably, or whomever invented climate change. It's not existing. They are talking about surviving. They are talking about surviving. And the people who don't want refugees in, or it's actually misused. It's a misused term in the European Union, in a lot of member states, and honestly misused by the right-wing movement or the non-democratic forces. And they are using our arguments like culture needs to survive, etc. They are using it and say, okay, if more people from the outside are coming in, it's misused. So it's a death. We need to survive from the non-positive influences to our culture, which, by the way, raises the question: what is culture in fact? And is there something like a national culture? And sorry for being precise, I think we have a common European culture. We probably have also something like a human culture, because we have shared values that are super important. We believe in our shared values, which are usually summarized in the human rights and which are included in all institutions in the world except for North Korea. I'm sorry, poor people in North Korea, but it's an agreement, a worldwide agreement. And I think this is a super basis for anything we call culture.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you. I noted that Berg made a lot of notes. So basically my question is more like the same as for Teil, especially as you have this, kind of parallel experience in the context of our part, mostly our part of the world, as one of the organizers of Prima Vista literary festival here in Estonia. So I will ask you about this Estonian context, about this regional context, and again the outward look.
First, to answer to the question in the title of the panel, all times are times of surviving. And perhaps in better times, it's not that obvious. And people take life a lot more for granted. But I'd say life is all about survival. And actually, the concept of Tartu 24, Arts of Survival, is a recycle from an old slogan of Prima Vista Festival in 2010, which was then Art of Survival in singular. And that was in the wake of global economical crisis. And that also was a time for a lot of talk about survival of the arts, because there were, again, those cuts out of the economic crisis and questions whether artists are needed and all that. But bringing it to European capital of culture, we made it sound in plural. And much of the reasoning was actually what you were talking about, that it's more than just arts in the sense of fine arts. There's also art in the sense of skill, art in the sense of crafting, art in the sense of negotiation. There's a famous book, The Art of War, so on and so forth. So indeed, that is the broad sense in which to understand arts of survival. And even then, when we introduced it in 2018, there was a lot to latch it onto. The climate crisis, the excessive dependence on digitization, the lack of crafting skills, the mental health issues, everything was already there. The identity issues of small local and national groups. And at the same time, there were people who said, what are you talking about? We're doing fine. Why are you so gloomy about this survival thing? Then COVID-19 happened. And the whole arts of survival got a whole new perspective. Then war in Ukraine went full scale. It got another perspective. Now, there are very few people who think that arts of survival is not relevant as a concept. It has a lot of directions in terms of interpretation. Now, coming back to the arts side of it and how artists reacted, I think it doesn't have to be seen in a narrow sense, even though, for example, in Prima Vista, when we have communicated to Ukrainian artists, Ukrainian poets, there are, of course, those who say that they can't read or write fiction anymore. They can't enjoy fiction anymore. They can only think about how to express this horrendous situation. And of course, we respect that. But at the same time, I think a lot of people in Estonia, a lot of people in Tartu got this first human-scale coverage from a Hessonian artist called Victoria Berezina. Of course, there are those very technical war bloggers. We still read them every morning. But she wrote those letters from her son about how a local young woman artist experiences the war. And while there's a lot of anger and hatred and frustration, there's also in those letters there was moments of joy, being with friends, having those friendly rituals, and continuing to make art. And she has those surreal collages that you can't put your finger on and say, this is about this or that, this is about art, or this is about destruction, or this is about, I don't know, some other thing. So the message that she gave through those letters, now she's living in Tartu, was that you shouldn't be ashamed of feeling joy. That too is survival. You shouldn't be ashamed of making the kind of art that you make, because that is a means of survival in an active sense, presenting that kind of maybe escapist, maybe just aesthetic alternative that shows what's beyond, that shows that there's more. And at the same time, I think that those huge crises, being more aware of the climate crisis, being aware of the wars, having survived COVID, they have, in a way, made artists in all fields a bit more adult. I think in better times there was a bit too much of this being an artist in the sense of collecting your grant and clicking your bubbly glasses at the launch and expecting to be interviewed, expecting to be reviewed, getting good reviews, getting bad reviews, but being noticed all the same. And maybe not so much concentration on content and responsibility. But there's a lot of, I still feel there's a lot of that expectation to be accepted the way I am. I'm an artist, so give me money, I do whatever I want. But I guess there are people around you who expect you to have certain responsibility and certain content. And there's always this tension between the ethical imperative of addressing those big, important issues, grave issues, and the aesthetic imperative of avoiding cliches in that. Because you can address very important human issues and still produce very bad art. So maybe this becoming more adult is connected to this growing tension between those imperatives. Stronger moral imperative, stronger ethical imperative in terms of addressing certain issues. And because more and more artists are doing it, avoiding cliches with that. And that means going beyond just those very one-to-one images or one-to-one devices of expressing yourself. There can be very strong artworks that are kind of one-to-one, like I think earlier this year, those bombed houses, and last time I were put on screens and shown on advertising screens. That was in a way very in your face, but it was strong art. But now coming to the question with a very long introduction, I think what happens in Ukraine has made people aware of the Ukrainian culture in much broader sense, in terms of helping Ukrainians to reclaim their history, because there's a lot of that pointing out and explaining that those artists, musicians, writers who you fought and who you were taught to think as Russian were actually Ukrainian. We need to reclaim them, and you Europeans need to help us to reclaim them. In my previous life, I was writing a PhD on exoticism. It kind of snowballed out of my control, so I never finished it. But it keeps haunting me in places, and that's, I think, one of them where when you read about earlier points of conflict in the world, and then there's this reception of art connected to them, which is very much based on that moral imperative. and which condemns those artists who are thought to be exoticizing those cultures. And there's this criticism that they are essentializing those cultures when they depict the locals in some kind of traditional garb, posing as tribal leaders. Those critics say, no, you have to talk about guns. You have to talk about violence because this is reality. But the people themselves want an alternative reality, want something else, want their identity to be construed as something else outside of that daily conflict. And that, in fact, also was the case in Setomaa, where one of those famous photographers came to take photos of those people in their traditional garbs, posing, and he was accused of exoticizing. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't jump to that. I think the people have the right to construe their identity in artistic representation in terms of utopia, in terms of mythological grandeur, maybe. Not just in terms of violence and being victims.
Mm-hmm. I will keep here on the topic, if I may. You mentioned these two imperatives. Mm-hmm. And the first is this responsibility to witness. And do you think, and that's actually for me, it's one of the questions of today's discussion. Do you think these expectations are different for artists from different countries? I mean, the expectation to follow this imperative.
There's a multitude of expectations in any culture, I think. But yes, I would agree that at least the initial expectations were here. In terms of Ukrainians, was to have those war stories and depictions of war, just to maybe have this greater human connection with a kind of shock you're experiencing. And at times it might have grown a bit restrictive and focused only on that kind of art and not maybe being that much interested in other kinds of art or literature. I'm not talking about visual arts, also literature, all kinds of arts. And I think we've been taught to listen to other kinds of stories and see human and artistic dreams, ambitions beyond that.
Oksana, you want to add something?
Maybe I will add, because when I speak about all Ukrainian art is about war, it's not about reflecting only dreadful things. I understand that I need to slightly widen this perspective, because for Ukrainian art now it's important to reflect the changing of our sensitivity, for example. Yes, because people find that some images are painful for them, but it's not images of dead people or something. In 2022, we discussed with artists such feelings of these bombed fields. The fields with caverns, and people were surprised, and we discussed with artists that it's absolutely extremely painful because we have this news with these images of frontline of bombing or something, but this acute pain. With the image of the field with caverns was surprising, and our artists reflected this. Our artists reflected the changes of sensitivity in what sense? We, in reality of war, we orient on the sounds more than for images. And that's why sound works have the new life in Ukrainian art. So it's very different kinds of experience. It's experiences of people who went in evacuation. So we have such a layer of Ukrainian art connected with this feeling of gap, of confusion, of something when a person is out of home and this feeling of life stops on pause. Yes, it's very different. So the culture reflecting the experience of war, it's not about cruelties, dead people, bodies or something. Yes, they're very, very different. And one of Ukrainian artists, Piotr Arminovsky, who is in army now, he said that the experience of this war is very documented war. So we have millions of images. And he imagined that the story of his war could be told as Homer, as a blind person from darkness, with no images. Yes, it's one more layer of artistic reflection. So I speak about art, not about white culture, because I work with art. And I absolutely agree that culture is more wide, and we can speak about many phenomena of cultural life connected with these new experiences. Thank you.
Till, you wanted to add something, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. I mean, maybe we don't need to go that deep in the question of surviving, or if it's a right term, or if we need to look for another term. Probably, maybe it's not really that important. Mm-hmm. The only thing that probably, Berg, I would love to ask you or put into the discussion is, first, I totally agree. And I think it's super important, and probably we need it more, is something we call, let's say, social responsibility within whatever we are doing. I mean, we are, as humans, we are not alone. I mean, so we should have a responsibility for the societies, for our culture where we're living, for the European Union, for whatever, for the clan. That's probably one thing, just to make it clear. If that might be understood wrong, that's definitely not what I wanted to say. It's the other way around. I think it's super important. Second, you started, and that's maybe a too sophisticated discussion, but at least for, let's say, for the Central European states, and that's probably a little bit my role, that I'm here from a Central European state, is to say, okay, we witness also some negative effects, of course. I mean, we also have a lot of challenges, and you know them all. Might be financial crisis, as you call it, a refugee crisis, so-called. Sorry, please understand it in brackets, because I don't agree to that term, etc., etc. But to me, it's interesting. Do we call it crisis? It's a super negative start, and honestly what we witness in the last years more and more is that people, let's say, start to question and saying, okay, if it's really a crisis, and if it's about only surviving that's left, if there's anyway no chance I can do, because climate crisis will anyway come, or the US will anyway bomb us, or the Russians will come, or whatever. It's a stepping out. It's a stepping out of society. It's a stepping out of building something. It's a stepping out of believing there's a future. And please, this is not a critique on the term. It is maybe just telling you a little bit a weird and quite complicated situation in the European Union at the moment. And I mean, you know all it, how vulnerable it is that Hungary is obviously a not really democratic state. Slovakia, Italy have changed like into a, let's say, very precise right-wing movement. And and it makes a lot with the European Union, as we have some parts we need to speak with one voice. And it got a huge influence on support for the Ukraine. I mean, no doubt. And of course, I think to me, I mean, we cannot change every situation in every European country. But what we can do is search for ways to make things possible. And maybe the last thing to put it also in is, you also know that there's a massive change in reception of media. I mean, the whole media sector has changed, etc., etc. Not to go too deep, but we have something that's called alternative truth, which is a very fancy word. It's just a lie. And it's not that easy, obviously, in a lot of things, and obviously also not in the discourse. If you take a look at the discourse in Germany or in Austria it's even more absurd. You have a discourse which is not based on a truth anymore. It's a so-called alternative truth, and people believe it. And it's absurd. On the other side, my son is 13 now, and he is, let's say from time to time, he said, "Oh, Dad, why is it a 5-minute report? I mean, come on. Half a minute, it's okay. Give me a quick information." And it's absurd. So forgive me that I made it very strong to say culture is more than the arts. It is, of course, education. It is, of course, a common sense and an understanding for our general values. And we are suffering and we are in a super challenging situations in the Western countries, who are rich countries still. I mean, come on. I mean, honestly, for 90% of the people, we are not talking about an existential question in terms of really physical surviving. Thanks God. I mean, honestly, thanks God. But if you ask the people, they would probably 50% will say, "No, it's not okay. No, we are nearly at the end." But it's probably super important for the whole discussion. We have to have that view inside and saying, okay, what does it mean? And last thing, we are all Europeans. We are all believing, I hope we are all believing in something like common European values. If it might be the European Union as we know it in 40 years, I don't know. But it definitely can't, and it definitely should not be a division of any national country to another national country in the European Union, because then we are honestly lost in our continent. And that implies the full support of Ukraine. I mean, what else shall it be implied? Because we are talking about Europe.
There's a good saying: "Don't let the good crisis go to waste." We hear it very often these days. Yes, and it's a kind of euphemistic version of another dictum we hear very often these days, and that came from our legendary President Lennart Meri: "The situation is shit, but shit is fertilizer for the future." I don't quite agree. Sometimes shit is just shit, but it carries this can-do attitude, which I think has been at the center of European Capital of Culture in Tartu. And of course, we had this criticism as well that survival is a too passive word, and it leaves little hope. But a crisis is a situation where you realize that you can't quite go on as before. You have to rethink things, and you have to figure out what to do about it. What to change in your habits, what to change in your habits of consumption, your everyday habits, but also in terms of how you create, how you communicate to people, how you communicate outside of your culture. When we started this process, you might know him, the kind of ECOC model, Hans-Dieter Schmidt came to Tartu for some field work and talked to people to identify the central challenge of Tartu. And he came up with two phrases, splendid isolation and smug insularity. We were so comfortable in our own bubble where kind of worldly troubles seemed to be so far away. And we weren't all that much interested in those broader crises. But that meant marginalization. In terms of Europe, we were a province. And that's the story behind Arts of Survival. In order to survive as a small culture, you must reach out. You must communicate to other countries, to have partners in the rest of the world, to hear your stories, help tell your stories, and you also listen to their stories and find this common ground. Now, to briefly define the kind of situation we might call crisis in Europe, I think is precisely the moment when you realize that you have expected people to share the same values. People from the third countries coming in share those European values because they feel they are safer in this context, but they all don't. You have expected people to believe in the same narratives, but suddenly those alternative facts turn up. And in order to support the continuation of democracy, you kind of should give them the platform. But then you see that they actually undermine that democracy, so what to do?
Yeah, this is a quite easy answer what to do then, because I mean, usually we have something like a legal system. I just wonder, like, do we need a crisis to be active? And this was my argument. I'm not doubting the crisis.
I'd say yes. Maybe it's
this is
us as Estonians who just can't live otherwise.
I just wonder because okay, that's fair. This is what they said usually also about the Germans. We just needed something like a crisis. I'm just wondering because I think like one of the resources we have as humans is we are creative. We are able to think critical, even if it's not called a crisis, because all people see it as a crisis. This is at least what I think. And you can be, again, a little bit negative and say, okay, if we always wait until it's a crisis, and then we are, let's say, very often in a situation where we just said, okay, and what to do now? I mean, we missed a lot of chances on the way, let's be precise. I mean, we know about climate change quite long.
Yeah, we shouldn't wait, and that, I think, is again, an answer to the question in the title, that you need to prepare for those crises also in more peaceful times, and that doesn't mean just being overly worried about anything, but just to think about alternative futures. VCOC is all about hope, I think, giving hope and helping people to think about those alternative futures, but those alternative futures can be good or bad. And when you don't think about how to prepare for a disaster, then you get Valencia.
Well, that's probably a little bit too easy.
It is. But I needed a rhetorical punchline.
At this catastrophic point, I propose to open the floor for questions, and I already see one. Something.
Thank you very much for a very, very interesting talk. And I would actually want to continue and ask this another difficult question. How could we actually raise this feeling of responsibility in people? Because it seems that it is something that is crucial for this factual survival. And I maybe could see that in case of Ukraine, the personal responsibility that people took in Ukraine from the first days, that no, we're not giving up, we're keep on fighting, and we're not expecting that there will some hypothetical force, some hypothetical army, hypothetical West will come and save us, but we actually, every single one of us takes the responsibility and does something at our place. This is something that in my opinion, saved Ukraine so far, of course, with the support and help of the allies. But this personal responsibility is crucial, and seeing how the things are also developing in terms of the the shift of the perception of the democracy nowadays, it's kind of like we're losing, or it like gets between the fingers, slips away. I believe that it's a core thing that every European citizen also takes the responsibility that, okay, we need to do something right now. We need to prepare for the crisis, for the climate change, military conflicts, whatever. But how actually to awake this feeling in people, and how can we operate in terms of culture and art for this purpose?
This is a super wide question again, and surprisingly, I mean, I cannot speak for you, but I beg you would probably answer something similar. Unfortunately, there is no red book you can just read, and that's the answer. Yeah, unfortunately not. I probably, maybe as a super quick personal answer, I believe in some ways. One of is of course, an open and critical education. I mean, this is crucial. I mean, if we leave our kids behind, we don't need to think about the future, because, I mean, they are the future, what to do. The misuse and imbalances of power is something we definitely need to address. And I mean, I'm not always super positive if we will succeed, but actually we have a misuse of power, and we have imbalances of power. And third thing, I think there is a more than good idea in participation or in collaboration, etc. But honestly, let's take it serious and not play it as an alibi function. And if we played it, and we played it quite good the last 40 years as, yeah, dear citizens, and what do you think about this? Okay, play a little bit, but we anyway are not interested in it. And this is probably a very strong argument again for democracy. Democracy is dead if you even start thinking about that your citizens are an object, or as I mean, come on, that's a beginner seminar for democracy, but we have that division of power, and if this is not existing, it's dead. Very simple. It's very simple. It's just not existing anymore.
Yeah, I'm still coming back to saying why crisis is good. Because, of course, on the one hand, there's hugely grown mental tension in young people, in anyone, but perhaps especially visibly among young people because of those heavily communicated crises, the climate crisis, the war. They don't seem to find their place where they can change anything or where they can influence anything. But the flip side of it, I think, is that they are becoming more aware that welfare is not for granted. You have to do something for it to persist. Or maybe not persist in the same way as it has been before, in the sense of excessive consumption and everything being at your grasp, and you being able to buy whatever you want because your parents earn enough for you to go to Amazon or anything and say, I want this, I want that. No, I think we're becoming more aware that they they need to take control of themselves. They need to do something themselves about the continuation of welfare. And luckily, and I think it's a good thing, they are becoming more aware that welfare is not about heaping up stuff. It's somewhere else. It's about mental health. It's about safety. It's about nature. It's about being able to communicate to others in a free world. And that is something where they have to have their input.
Oh, that's excellent point for to be our final point because we are.
We have also the opinion of the Ukrainian women, not only
Maybe as a Ukrainian, I can say that if we speak about responsibility, it's only private example, yes, when we show. So maybe as a person living in Ukraine, I decided don't ask about refuse of responsibility of somebody, because I have near me very responsible people. And I understand that if I will think about others, I have no resource for this. I understand that it's not a receipt for society, yes. And but speaking about Ukraine, we understand that. So civil society, yes, it's not a watching dog in Ukraine, but is. Тягловий, як це сказати, тягловий пес. So in normal society, civil society is watching dog, and is in North these dogs who have this sledge dog. Thank you very much. So in our reality, we took this situation as such. So we have a very responsible part of society who do their job. Taking out the thoughts about the state, about responsibility of the state or something. Maybe due to such people we are alive now. Because even our army are on the shoulders of civil society, yes? So maybe now I'm in that situation that I have no resource to find the answers how to rise in the responsibility of different people, because I know that I have near me some very big group, and I think about them. And that's all.
So now that's really all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the panelists.